This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers podcast.
With Tony Bruschi.
Shavaun Scott is with us, psychotherapist and author. The book, The Minds of Mass Killers, Understanding and Interrupting the Pathway to Violence. Thank you so much, Shavaun, for being here. I want to get your take on some of the jurors who have now spoken out about being on the jury panel in the case against Lori Vallow Daybell, expressing their thoughts, their feelings, and how things went and how deliberations went down. What stood out to you thus far from the interviews that you've seen?
You know, what jumped out at me, first of all, is how seriously these folks took this job. I mean, I was just really impressed with the caliber of the jurors who have been doing interviews, that these were really intelligent people, very dedicated to doing the right thing and looking at the evidence and coming in without preconceived ideas. I was just really struck by the caliber of the jurors. And then also their reactions, which were the same as the rest of us, that this was just so beyond belief and so horrifying. One talked about looking at Lori and feeling like he was just looking at the face of evil, you know, which I think the rest of us have had that same kind of gut response, that this is just incomprehensible. But at the same time, finding these religious beliefs completely bizarre, and the strangeness, the surreal quality of having, even though it was a small group, a group of people that would send these texts around about demons and castings, and that it was just so incredibly strange and beyond, far beyond what you see with typical religious groups.
Yeah. Were you surprised at all by any of the things? Because sometimes it's interesting where we have the bigger picture on the outside. Obviously, the jury only seeing what they're allowed to see in that window. Were you surprised at all by any of their reactions as far as what stood out as being important to them in the trial versus what we've seen on the outside?
No, nothing really surprised me. I just thought they did a remarkable job of following the evidence and not being influenced. But the evidence was there. There was so much evidence. And several talked about the case that was presented, that it was just a very clear case with lots of documentation and all the text messages, the timeline. I think that they did a very good job. And then they also expressed surprise that the defense basically put up nothing. And I was surprised in the same way.
What do you think the defense could have put up if they indeed wanted to, if Lori had allowed them to, I guess I should say?
Yeah, you know, the only place I think I could have gone looking at this nightmare would have been perhaps more of an effort to portray Lori as a person who had been a good mother, who had been dedicated to the kids, that maybe that could have raised some doubts in jurors' minds about how much did she really know about this. Look at what a dedicated mother she had been and how she had cared for Tylee and JJ all those years. That could have had some kind of impact. I don't know that it would have, but they didn't even go there, you know, which struck me as surprising.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if they kind of realized that adding more fuel to the fire, no matter what you do, it just wasn't going to go out, that there really wasn't anything that was going to extinguish any of this or help her in any way, shape, or form. It feels like the more they could have possibly gotten into the belief system or break it down or try to help somebody understand it, I don't know that it would have benefited them in any way.
Yeah, apparently not. They know more than I do about it, and they made a call, and I'm sure they had their reasons. But it was a surprise, and that surprised the jurors as well.
Do you think we're going to see a different kind of defense when it comes to Chad's trial that's still upcoming?
You know, that's a good question. I really don't know. I would hate to be a defense attorney for Chad. I don't know where in the world they can go with this. It just seems like an overwhelming mountain of evidence against him at this point.
Would you be surprised if there's some sort of a plea deal made at this point? And who knows if the state will even want to do that, to take death off the table. But I wonder if they would in terms of being interested in saving resources and costs to the taxpayers.
Right. Yeah, that's possible. Certainly, if I were Chad and facing the death penalty, I would be looking at a plea deal at this point. kind of hard to imagine being Chad and thinking the way Chad does. So who knows? But it sure looks like kind of a slam dunk case against him.
Almost certain death if he goes forward with it.
Yeah.
Maybe the only possibility, and that would be the attorneys doing their job, which they did for Lori. If they did anything, they did their job because they got death off the table. I guess that may be the only goal right now that they have with Chad.
Yeah, I certainly don't see him not having a guilty conviction. So if he had the opportunity to take a plea deal, he would be smart to do it.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Bruschi.
Shavaun Scott, psychotherapist and author, thank you so much for your insight. We greatly appreciate that. If you like the podcast, you want access to all of our episodes ad-free. Yeah, you can binge away on all of the episodes, all of the podcasts, all of the shows, ones that focus specifically on certain cases. It's all there for you on Apple Podcasts when you become a premium subscriber to the True Crime Today family. Do check that out right there on Apple Podcasts and press subscribe and get access to all of that stuff. I'm Tony Bruschi. Stay with us.